Hi everyone, this is OCD Live. I'm Ali Graymond, and let's get to some questions. Actually, before we get to questions, I just wanted to apologize for my voice. I've lost my voice last week, and that's why there was no show last week. And I'm just getting my voice back, so if I sound a little bit different, that's why. So, the first question I have is I obsess every day that when I get off of work, I'm going to go crazy or lose control and panic. My theme I have faced over and over for months, proving it won't happen. But every day close to the time I go, I start getting in the funk and thinking, what if it does? What am I doing that I need to change? And see, this is a repetitive thing, right? So every time you're about to go home, right, from work, and you get this thought of, oh my God, what if today's the day? What if today I lose control? You have to always remind yourself that this is the same thought you've already had yesterday. Nothing's going to change. This is not different. This is the same situation over and over again. So if you react, you're continuing the pattern of OCD. So you have to choose not to react. And it's a forceful thing, right? You have to force yourself to choose that way, even though you have the doubt, even though you have the anxiety. And over time, the anxiety will start to go away. But don't chase the fact that if I disregard now, then the anxiety has to go away now. It doesn't really work that way. So, because you're disregarding, it doesn't mean that the anxiety is going to lessen right away. So, the anxiety will be high, the thoughts will feel real, it will feel like it really could possibly happen, but it feels like that for everybody who has OCD. So, always pull back and say, okay, this is what's happening, this is why it's happening. I'm getting these thoughts because I have OCD and because my mind gets triggered about this particular theme. This is my theme, I'm not reacting to it anymore. And then as you do this, the theme will start to go away. But you have to do it consistently because just like before, you were repeating that, oh my God, I'm getting anxious, oh my God, I'm going to lose control, and you start to panic, you're making it more important in your mind, and that was repetitive. Now you have to repetitively say to your mind that it's not important. So it has to be done over and over again every night. The good thing is that you do have a lot of exposures. So you are already halfway there in terms of you are already exposed, you're just not preventing the response. You're responding with fear. You have to prevent yourself from responding with fear. And that just means talking down the situation. So, yes, this is happening. This is why it's happening. I'm not reacting. I'm choosing not to react. If I do happen to go crazy, then I'll deal with it because that's what your brain's going to say. Well, what if you choose not to react and then something's going to happen, right? That's like the always OCD thought. So your response will be, when it does happen, then I'll deal with it. And you'll be the first one because out of all the people I've ever talked to who had OCD, nothing has really happened to anybody who thought that they would have something that would happen, you know, either in the past or in the future or in any situation. So you'll be the first one. Yeah, so it's not going to happen. But in that moment of fear, it's just important for you to stand your ground. So the next question I have is, hi Ali, I understand intellectually that I need to accept and allow my feelings and thoughts, but at the moment I feel like I lack the inability to do so. Every time the thought or uncomfortable feeling pops up, I know that I need to experience it. Almost feels like my mind automatically blocks it or suppresses it. This makes me even more on edge because I start to obsess about the fact that I may have a lot of suppressed emotions underneath the surface. Is there anything I can do to help remove the resistance? Really, the only thing you can do is to keep practicing it. So try to do to the best of your ability. And also, when you have a situation that you know will most likely trigger you, be prepared before you even get into the situation. So, for example, if going to a shopping center triggers you, right? Before you even start going, you gotta talk to yourself that this is okay, this is a normal activity, I'm gonna be fine. I am gonna get thoughts. When I do, I'm gonna disregard. So that way you're already setting yourself up and creating a program that you're going to follow when the situation arises. So there's no surprises, there's no thinking, kind of like quick thinking on your feet trying to figure out what to do next. You have a plan, you're going with the plan, you're going to do exposure, and then you're going to do response prevention. So it might not work all the time. I mean, for sure, it will not work all the time, but it has to work most of the time in order to recover. So keep practicing and keep going at it. Even if, say, you react completely over the top, and then the next time you react, but not as much as the first time. That's already improvement. So you're showing already to your mind that it's not as scary. So even though sometimes we do react, that how much you react also makes a difference. So I would say it's a learning process. You're teaching yourself how to react to these situations. At the same time, you're teaching your mind how to respond correctly. So there is a learning curve here. So I would say that what you're experiencing is totally normal. It's definitely all part of OCD, but you just have to keep going and keep practicing it and really trying to control how you're reacting. At the same time, no coffee, no like stimulating beverages of any kind. They're really bad for you. Making sure you're controlling your breathing, making sure you are prepared for the exposure. All of these things are already from the beginning set you up for success. So then when you're faced with a situation and you're forced to react, you're much better equipped to react without fear, or with much less fear anyways. So the next question I have is, how many clients have you had with OCD health anxiety, obsessions with health and body related anxieties? And I would say that still, harm OCD is the number one most common type of OCD that I see from day to day. Um, but health and body related is still fairly common. So I would say that there's about 10 themes that I see all the time kind of repeating for people, and that one is definitely one of them, but it's not my number one that I see every single day. Um, in terms of how many, I mean, over the years, obviously, I've had quite a few just because of how many people I talk to, um, but yeah, no, there's nothing abnormal about this type of theme. It's whether it's health, whether it's harm, whether it's religious, whether it's um, homosexual OCD, whether it's, I don't know, cheating OCD, relationship OCD. It can be about really anything. It's the reaction that matters, and you gotta always remember that this is an anxiety disorder. So your brain is attached to the anxiety and not so much to the theme. So over time, when a person kind of goes from one stage of life to another, the themes can change as well. So the theme that you have right now can change to another one later on down the line, unless you fix the actual situation of OCD and the situation of anxiety. And a lot of the time, too, actually, most of the time, people who have OCD, they'll have their primary theme, which is something that they worry about, say 90-80% of the time. And then they'll have secondary themes that are kind of in the back of their mind. Sometimes they bother them. A lot of the time, this has to do with checking and things like that, that they still kind of do compulsions for, but it's not their main focus when it comes to themes. So that's another kind of issue that people deal with. So the next question I have is, I'm going to summarize it a little bit, but the person is asking um, about listening to my videos and feeling that, what if I said something that doesn't necessarily agree with somebody else, and what if they're saying something that's a little bit different, and what if they're doing the wrong thing, and this kind of thinking. Basically, this is another very common situation. And this happens because your mind wants to make sure that you are safe. So when you start to think, well, what if I'm doing it wrong? What if my anxiety is never going to go away? I don't feel like my anxiety is decreasing. All of these things, again, part of OCD. So the more you react, the more you will feel like that. And if you're doing reassurance by re-listening, rechecking, all of these are all traits of OCD. So again, saying that if I am not responding to the fear thoughts, then I am doing the correct thing. That is all that you need to do. Is you're exposed to the thoughts, whatever thoughts you have, whatever theme you have, and you're preventing the response of fear. If you're doing that, you're fine. And I mean, it's not a perfect science, right? It's going to be to the best of your ability. Some days are going to be better, some days are going to be worse. But if you're striving for that, and every day you're moving forward in that, you are doing good. You don't need to get into the details of, because I know there's a few experts on YouTube about it, and they kind of say pretty much the same thing, but sometimes specific sentences could, like, be different, obviously, right? So don't get caught up in all of that. If you're doing the work and, basically of everything we're talking about, disregarding the thoughts, not taking them seriously, coming from a position of power, not from a position of fear. If you're doing that, or you're trying to do that, then you're doing good, you're doing the right thing, you're going to recover. That's all you need to know. So it's kind of, I am kind of giving you reassurance, but I just don't want you to get into a situation where you are doing compulsions with re-listening, rechecking, or re-examining, because all of that will just get you deeper into the situation. You want to make sure that you're listening to my podcasts or other people's podcasts as a tool for your recovery. And if your OCD tells you, oh no, you have to listen again, you have to double check, you don't have to do that. It's just a suggestion from your brain, and the brain, that part of the brain thinks that this is important. You don't have to listen to what your brain tells you. You don't have to double check. This is not different than checking the oven of, what if I didn't turn the oven off? It's the same kind of thing. You don't have to double check. So next question I have is about OCD causing false attraction and unwanted arousal. And I mean, this is all very common stuff. It's because that part of the brain thinks that the situation is important to you. It's creating feelings as if it's real, and those can be feelings on a mental level or on a physical level. So nothing to worry about, nothing to be scared about. Your job is to refuse paying attention to these thoughts. Refuse to react with fear. As you do that, all of these symptoms, including false arousal, including unwanted attraction, all of these things are going to go away because there's nothing behind them. They're a symptom of OCD. So as the brain figures out that this is nothing, this is not scary, this is not dangerous, right? All of these thoughts are going to naturally go away. So you don't have to do anything specific for these symptoms. All you have to do is you have to refuse paying attention. It's the attention. The more attention you pay, the more of these symptoms you're going to get. The less attention you pay, the less of these symptoms you're going to get. But it's going to take some time, so you got to give it some time and not expect the results right away, because a lot of the times the person will be like, well, I've disregarded the thought once, but I'm still having all of this anxiety and feelings and all of this. Well, yeah, because you paid attention to it about 1,000,000 times, and now you've disregarded once, which is good, but now you need to disregard a lot more times in order for it to go away. So there is a time element and repetitiveness involved in it as well. So just keep going, and don't allow yourself to pay attention to it as meaningful or as important. It's not. It's just a symptom. So in the previous video, I talked about why traditional OCD recovery does not work well. And somebody asked me about what is standard recovery. What I see most of the times that the doctors recommend is medication, and along with that, a CBT program, but CBT hierarchy geared program, where the person is making a list of things that they're scared of, and assuming they're physical compulsions, right? And then doing them one by one until they get over those specific symptoms, which for pure road, that doesn't work at all, because all you're dealing with is thoughts, right? And for physical compulsions, even if you reach the top of that hierarchy and you get habituated to these thoughts, so what? You're gonna get new thoughts, because again, the problem with OCD is anxiety, you know, and medication is not gonna solve it in terms of, forever getting rid of OCD, right? Getting rid of specific compulsions will not solve it. You need to view it as anxiety and then attack those specific compulsions as well. Because usually, I mean, pretty much 100% of the time, the person will have a common root to their thoughts. So there'll be a common theme that's linking all of the compulsions together, and you have to kind of lump all of the compulsions as a one thing. So it doesn't matter if you're doing this, and this, you're doing it because of that reason. And same with Puro. You might have this thought, this thought, this thought, but it all has to do with one underlying thing, right? Or maybe sometimes, like I talked in one of the previous questions, there'll be two or three themes that keep switching between each other, right? But it's it's a very specific number of just a few themes that are driving all of this anxiety. And you need to deal with that rather than individualizing to a specific situation, you know? So that's kind of what I meant in the previous video about traditional recovery and why it doesn't work. So next question I have is, hi Ali, can you give coping tips while in the process of recovery? Yes, of course. So what you want to do is you want to minimize stress, because the brain views OCD stress versus regular life stress as the same thing. It doesn't understand the difference. This is the problem, is it doesn't understand which thoughts are real, which thoughts are not. It views all the thoughts as real. So you want to make sure that as much as possible you are allowing yourself time to calm down. You know, don't take on too many projects if you already have high OCD. Now, you don't want to go too much the other way and have your life completely emptied for you, just so you don't have to deal with more stuff than OCD, because you want to be occupied to a certain extent so you have things to refocus on. But if you feel overwhelmed, then that's going too far. So you want to make sure that yes, you have some stress, but you're not too overwhelmed. Now, in addition to that, reduce or get rid of all of caffeinated drinks. Coffee really affects OCD. I'm not really sure why, but I see it over and over again. So as much as you can get rid of caffeine, and I mean like colas, all of it. Please do. Even tea, things like that, because it will really help you. It won't get rid of OCD for you, but it's like you're upping it another notch every time, right? Stress, you're upping it another notch. Coffee, another notch, right? Um, Also, if you are in a situation where you have abnormal sleeping, that's again upping it another notch. So try to calm it down to where you're sleeping regularly, you're not taking in any caffeine, your stress is within normal boundaries, you're living as normal as possible, even though sometimes, like, when you have OCD, you might feel like, I don't want to go out. I feel like when I'm with my friends, I feel like I'm faking it. I feel like I'm not being a real person. Those are all very common thoughts, but you have to continue to live a normal life, because that shows your mind that there's nothing wrong, because really there isn't anything wrong, right? So you want to make sure that you are living as if everything is okay, because everything is okay, and that's going to show your mind that it needs to change how it's viewing this, because there is no real danger. So that propels you forward rather than avoiding things because you might get triggered, because that's not really good, or because you might feel guilty or whatever. All of that sends a message of fear. You always want to come to the just any kind of OCD situation from a position of strength. That yes, I'm having these thoughts. Yes, they feel real. Yes, they feel scary. But I am in control, and I'm not going to let this control my life anymore. I've let it control my life in the past. I'm done with that now. You know? So you're coming from a position of strength now, not coming from a position of, oh my God, this is happening to me. I feel so bad. You do, but you can't allow yourself to have that internal dialogue, because that's going to set you back. So those are just some quick tips on in terms of recovery. So the next question I have is, the person's asking, um, if you are in a situation where you're talking to somebody and you have topics that you are going to bring up, instead of allowing yourself to think or talk about OCD. So you say to yourself mentally, stop, don't talk about OCD, don't think about OCD. Yeah, let's talk about gardening or politics or news or whatever instead. And I do think that that's a really good strategy, because, again, you're preparing yourself that when I'm going to go out and have fun, OCD is going to try to get me. It's going to give me thoughts. When it does, I'm going to go do this, this, and this. I'm going to talk about these subjects. I'm going to disregard the thoughts. So you have a game plan. And having a game plan automatically puts you in the position of power, just like we talked about in the last question, right? So that already gives you the upper hand and already puts you more in control. That, yes, like, because when you actually experience this, you're going to say, yeah, okay, now this is happening. Now I'm getting the thoughts, but I have a plan. So it's going to be okay, and I'm going to go do this and this and this. So it is a very good idea to do that, of course. So the next question or comment I have is, The person says, something that's working for me is telling my OCD that I don't believe it anymore. It only works as my anxiety started to reduce as a result from ERP and taking inositol, like an SSRI. I am beginning to see that OCD tells me lies to try to scare me, but I'm started to feel more in control because I see that it's lying to me. And okay, not to downplay what you're taking, but this has probably very little to do with what you're taking in terms of chemicals. It is because of ERP. Because when you are at 10 out of 10 OCD, when you're in kind of the worst possible situation, you feel like your OCD is at its highest point, you can't really see any logic. But when you start to go down to like 7 out of 10, 8 out of 10 even, you start to see that it is lies. It doesn't make sense. Even though you do feel a lot of the pull still from, trying to figure it out and all of that, it's still not 100% like it was before, or close to 100%, right? So you start to understand it better, and you start to see the logic that it is the same thoughts over and over again. It doesn't make sense, and you start to see through the lies, and you are able to respond better. So you're doing really well. You have to keep doing ERP. The medication that you're taking, you can take it, you cannot take it, doesn't matter, but you have to keep doing ERP, because what you're doing is working. And saying again, like, look what you're doing here. You're coming from a position of power, saying, yes, I'm in control. Yes, these are lies. I'm not paying attention. This is all great stuff. Just keep going. You will recover. You're on your way. So the next question is, I'm having real bad setbacks, and simply ignoring them and not paying attention is not working anymore. What should I do? Usually this has to do with internal dialogue. So you must be coming from a position of fear. And the more you take the thoughts seriously, so you're getting probably stuck on the fact that the thoughts feel real and the thoughts feel scary, right? I'm not sure if you're having physical OCD, or pure O type, right? So, but either way, you gotta start coming from a position of power. So, no matter how real the thought feels, no matter what kind of consequences it gives you, no matter how many images it gives you, depending on the types of thoughts you have, right? Still, these are all OCD thoughts. They have never come true for anybody. So you'll be like the first one, which will never happen, right? So, obviously you're not going to be the first one. You have to start disregarding. So, and disregarding not just on a physical level of saying, okay, I'm ignoring, but then going back and rethinking the situation. It's usually when people are having trouble in this, just like how you're describing, it's usually because the person spends a lot of time thinking about the situation. And that's something you do control, right? So the thought comes to you, it's very painful, it's very scary, it feels very real. That's coming to you. You can't control that. But when you are saying, okay, let me think about this for 5, 6 hours, that's you. And you have to prevent yourself from doing that, because that's how you get worse, right? So whether you have to go out, do something, keep your mind occupied, do whatever you need to do, as long as you're not allowing yourself that response of fear and that time to think about the situation over and over again. And it will, just like I said in like one of the first questions, that you will have anxiety for a while. It won't go down and go away right away, but you will start to feel better. And just like the previous question that I was talking about, that the person at first, it wasn't changing, but then it started to change. And doing ERP, which is exposure, which is the thought, and response prevention, it really does work. But you have to put the work in, and not allowing yourself to get scared. That the thought is scary, but you don't have to get scared, because even though the thought is scary, it's not real. It can't actually hurt you. So the next question that I have is, how can you tell what is mental reassurance? Is seeking out information about OCD when you're feeling dreadful a mental ritual for reassurance? Um, so when you are seeking out information for OCD, is it because you need to understand the mechanics of it and how to recover? Or is it because you want to get reassured? You want to make sure that you're not doing reassurance, right? So this would be meant, if you're doing it specifically to figure out if your thought is OCD or not, That's reassurance, you know? And I mean, at first you kind of need to know the research and understand it. So at first it's not bad, but if you're doing it over and over and over again, then it becomes a compulsion, and that's definitely not good. Anytime you're thinking to your theme, no matter what your OCD theme is, right? If you're thinking about your theme, that's OCD reassurance. Because why would you think about your theme if you didn't have OCD? You would never even worry about it, right? So anytime you have to go back or think about the future of what will happen or what happened in the past, or in any kind of way worrying about the theme that you have, in terms of OCD, that's, I would already classify it as reassurance, and you need to stop doing that. Because in the ideal world, it's anything to do with your theme is off limits from now on. So it doesn't matter how you're thinking about it, you shouldn't be thinking about it at all. So for example, if you have a theme of what if I hurt somebody in the past, right? Then anything to do with that is off limits. If you see a movie and it triggers you, you're not going there. You're not thinking about it. You are still going to watch the movie, because if you don't, that's kind of avoidance, right? But you're not going to allow yourself to pay attention to it, that, oh, this has something to do with me or whatever, you know? So when that thought comes in, you're disregarding that thought, because thought will come in, but you are not supposed to pay attention to it. So, but basically, if you're thinking about anything that has to do with your theme, you're doing reassurance, right? So I hope that that's kind of explains it. I have a lot more questions, guys, so I'm gonna have 2 videos this week, because like I said, last week my voice was just horrible, so I couldn't do one. So expect another video in about a day or so, and I will answer the rest of the questions. So if your question wasn't answered in this one, it will be answered in the other one. If you need more information about anything I've talked about, you can always visit youhaveocd.com. There's private recovery program there with me. There's ebooks, there's articles, there's lots of information on OCD. There's lots of information on this channel about OCD. If you have any questions you would like me to reply to on the show, please post them below any of the videos, and I will pick them up on the next show. So don't feel shy about doing that. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.